They're like vying for like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna be running this year. I'm gonna raise sales tax 1% on canned food product, and it's gonna make us $10 million to, you know, usually what happens with the accountants is they'll say, hey, let us get a software out there, let us get a provider, and let us manage that provider for you. Because sales tax is complex enough where they don't want to be sitting there taking in tiny numbers. They don't want to be sitting there like, what we do is we tell customers, hey, listen, like if you onboard with us, once you onboard, that process takes like 1 or 2 calls, which is like an hour each. You won't ever have to touch it again. It's like a set it and forget it. Welcome to New Money Talks, episode 54.
Yeah, 54. Right. Over a year's worth of consistent uploads every single week.
Every single fucking
Really?
week.
Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
We've like, actually, fuck you, Dan Snow. Because he made us push the podcast from Wednesday to Friday because like he was coming out with that he sold his agency.
The
like,
acquisition news.
he said it on the podcast. He was like, can't have it out until Wednesday. I was like, all right.
So it's the only
whatever.
Wednesday upload, with the exception of maybe like 1 or 2 others.
That's pretty good though. I mean, like I write a newsletter every week and it's on Sundays, and the consistency. I'm at like 15, so it's not even like where you guys are, but
it's tough.
Dude, yeah, and because there's always just shit that comes.
Dude, just hire that ghostwriter, bro. What are you doing? Hire the ghostwriter.
You know what the problem is? Like,
ChatGPT.
So I actually have a thing about that because I write content on LinkedIn now every day, and I now noticed who writes content with ChatGPT and who doesn't, and it's a little bit cringy.
Yeah,
and it
sounds very robotic.
Yeah, and it's just like, what a pleasant little, whatever, and I'm just like, dude, like
nobody says
that.
Yeah.
And then if you're using these platforms to connect with people, why don't you just get a human being to do it? Like, why can't you afford XYZ to do that?
Yeah.
Like, don't take a shortcut to doing things that you just need to put in the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. So let's backtrack. So who the heck are you? And in 30 seconds or less,
man.
Who are you? And in 30 seconds or less, how would you explain what you do? We don't want to get too much into the backstory. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah. So my name is Rohit Bhadange.
He cannot pronounce that shit.
That's actually not that hard.
Dude, I've gotten like Bhadange, like a lot of other things, but a lot of people used to call me by my last name before, but Rohit Bhadange. I run a sales tax company. It's called Zamp. I've been an investor on Wall Street from the private equity side, did early stage venture. I ran my own real estate business. And now I, also help build other companies too. So
you've dipped your toes in a lot of different waters.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more fun that way because I feel like it's more fun to be multidimensional than single dimensional. Right?
So then you focus on sales tax.
Dude, it's funny because like I didn't even want to, like I never thought growing up like, hey, I'm going to do taxes my whole life. Because it was always that thing that like nobody wants to do and like screw the people that do taxes, right?
Yeah.
And it's like where I went to school, that was like, not like, I wouldn't say like,
but you went to Warren, right?
Yeah, I went to Warren and like people did, I mean, it was like investment bank.
Yeah, exactly. Consulting.
It had this like air of like, I don't want to say like in arrogance in some ways.
It's
like,
a very arrogant place.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we only do like anything that's like below that is not Warren, right?
If you don't work at Goldman, Morgan Stanley, you're fucked.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why even like things like accounting and not that there's any wrong with it. I think now, having been a founder and like having been in different aspects, I see values in a lot of things, but we were kind of brainwashed a little bit saying like, hey, a lot of these other things, are not like cool or like they're not kosher. And so I never thought I'd be doing sales tax, but now I, live and breathe this thing.
So a lot of people that watch and listen to us, they have e-commerce brands.
Yeah. And they do not pay sales tax.
And a lot of them don't pay sales tax because it's a pretty intricate and complicated concept to most people. Like some people know Nexus, like if they've done, a couple $1 million in revenue, like their accountant will have mentioned that term. They'll search it up and they'll be like, all right, 200 transactions, 100,000. So like some people know the basics of it, but like, how would you explain it to a 15-year-old what sales tax even is?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, sales tax is a way for the state to make money off of the business that you're doing at the end of the day. That's what it is, right? And you kind of, it's like a permission for you to be like, hey, you're doing business in my state. You owe us a little bit something. You kind of think of it like a toll. like that you pay on the roads or something. It's like a right of way to do business in our state.
Right. It's like cost of doing business, like but at a certain level, because there's thresholds for certain types of companies and things like that.
Yeah, and there's like certain thresholds, and I think it's different because like in the US they make it like unnecessarily complicated, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing in the US is like unnecessarily complex and whatnot. Like in Europe and stuff, it's just like one thing and it's pretty easy, it's straightforward. In the US, yeah, they have these. Every state has their own set of rules. Every state like operates like their own country. On top of that, these sales tax is a political tool. So every district, every county, every city, they're like vying for like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be running this year. I'm going to raise sales tax 1% on canned food product, and it's going to make us $10 million to, fund the books, fund the street, and it's like imagine how many politicians there are in the United States at the local levels.
Yeah,
everybody's like fighting for their own
for that 1% extra sales
exactly.
Tax. That's a big amount of money, probably.
Yeah,
but the problem is like everybody's fighting for it, which means the rules are always changing. And I think it's hard for e-commerce brands and even like anybody that's selling online, it's hard because these thresholds are really small. They're not like huge, right? It's like 200 orders usually or $100,000.
Right.
And 200 orders, if you think about it, like a subscription business, if you're just running an app on an app store.
Yeah.
If you have a guy that's, I don't know if you guys use budgeting apps or whatever that is, it's like some of them cost like $15, which isn't a ton, but that subscription is now monthly, but that's 12 orders for that year.
Yeah. So so that's like what, 14 customers or something? 15
exactly.
Customers?
You don't even need a lot to get there. And even if you look at like, you were talking about like Ron and Avi, right? Like those guys, they have this like subscription, the collagen piece, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't take a long time to get to the level where you need to be. And some people have it bi-weekly. This isn't even like a monthly thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that stuff adds up and it's tough because for these brands, unlike these larger companies that have like the resources in-house, that have like the people, they don't have that. And they're trying to run things lean. They're trying to focus on growth. Sales tax is a cost center. You're not making money off of this. Yeah. You're not making profit off of this. So how are you going to find the best way to make sure you take care of it, but also don't end up paying like.
So what does Zamp do that like a normal say accountant won't do?
I'd say like, it's not so much about what do we do that other people like an accountant doesn't do. I think the way that you think about it is like sales tax has been around for, like 100 plus years, right? The process the rules have changed, but the process is very similar in some ways. The thing with an accountant is that with sales tax these days, that knowledge has become very domain specific. So accountants, they do sales tax as a way to help their clients. They're saying like, hey, we support you in bookkeeping and these other things. Our core thing is not sales tax, but we're going to do it for you because we want to keep you as a client and keep you happy. Usually what happens with the accountants is they'll say, hey, let us get a software out there. Let us get a provider and let us manage that provider for you. Because sales tax is complex enough where they don't want to be sitting there taking and tying numbers. They don't want to be sitting there like updating rates manually, et cetera, because these things happen pretty frequently. So what we do is we tell customers, hey, listen, like if you onboard with us, once you onboard, that process takes like 1 or 2 calls, which is like an hour each. You won't ever have to touch it again. It's like a set it and forget it. With the accountant and with other providers, you have to go in and sometimes manage it. You got to manage their expectations. You got to be like, hey, like what happened here? And it's this like element of talking to somebody that doesn't do this as like they haven't been doing this as like
and then what's like the secret that you guys do behind the scenes that like make it so easy to like make streamline this happen?
I think I tell everybody this, like investors, like customers, everything. I think I'm not the sales tax guy, but I did hire sales tax people. I think the people are what makes it successful. It's the people and the technology, right? Technology streamlines it, but the people is because when you look at our team, there were a couple of different exits that happened in the space. One of them was this company called TaxJar. They got bought by Stripe for like, 9 figures, maybe 10 figures type thing. You have a company called Alphalera, got bought by Vista Equity for $8.4 billion. I'd say like 75% of my team has worked at least one or two of those companies.
Wow.
And when I say like they've actually helped build it. Like they were in the first like 20 employees at TaxJar, most of them. And like from engineering to tax to whatever. So the people that are taking care of that risk, at the end of the day, it's risk, right? The people that are taking care of that risk for you are people that have already done it before. And one person I'll mention, her name is Nicole Power, right? Nicole Power, Grant Martin, they've worked as state auditors before. So when someone comes to us and they're like, hey, listen, like why should we trust you? Like you're like a company that just is barely getting to 100 customers. Why should we trust you? And we're like, okay, because this isn't our first time doing it. And if there are problems, we have contacts at the state where, unlike with other providers that accountants or whoever else, they have to go through this process of, let me call the state, let me figure out who the right person is. That takes a couple hours. These people have these contacts on like texting basis.
That's cool.
So when you think about risk, like the stuff that you're talking about, like, hey, I'm going in to clean up my stuff. It's just, what do you care more about? Like your time? Or do you care more about like doing it yourself? And at some point in a company, you just have to get leverage.
So pretty much like behind the scenes, there's like a bunch of accountants that are doing all this stuff.
I think it's driven by technology, meaning like we import like all the data.
Okay.
We have these reports that are created that look exactly like the state website. They flow into the state website, so it's like a one-to-one match. There's no accountants, I'd say. There's people that are like sales tax auditors that are running it on the back end.
So you're pretty much doing like the opposite of scraping. Like you're like, like you're scraping your own forms you're making, and then you're putting them into like the online forms.
Yeah, well, we actually scrape the online forms so that when we have people come in, it's not like when we give it to the customer. A lot of times what happens, you give the form to a customer and you're like, hey, listen, here's the form. And the customer looks at the state website like, why does this look the same? And people never had it so that it was a one-to-one match. And now I don't think anybody in the industry does this because it's pretty hard. It's the form that we've created is a one-to-one match with what's online because we've scraped kind of the form online.
Interesting.
And the way it's going to happen is like every time the form changes, our forms will change.
Got you.
And so like when you talk about like, when you look at it from an accounting perspective, we don't need accountants because that's all like tech.
That's being filled in automatically.
Where like the people come in is like the onboarding process. Like when I bring you in as a customer, I set up your account the right way because that's where a lot of people run into trouble. Like you talked about, everybody, we just turned on all the states. Like we make sure you turn on the right states at the right times and we manage that for you. Gotcha. And then on the back end, if like you have these notices from states, we'll respond to all those emails, all those traffic, all that stuff. So you basically are just hands off.
Nice. How much does it cost?
It depends. Like, I mean, starter tier is like $199 a month.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah. And it kind of like scales up because we do this like all-in-one pricing. We take care of everything for you. And our whole point is like, let's start people. It's kind of like, let's charge people what's fair and has value. So I wouldn't say like we're the cheapest solution on the market. You could probably find something super cheap, but we probably have the highest value in the market in terms of.
Like, do you start charging like by state and everything too, though?
No, we don't. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's unlimited.
So I know some of those guys like Taxtra, Valera, like they start charging like literally per state, like $75 a state or whatever.
Exactly. But the problem with that is that your incentives are misaligned.
Yeah.
Because what you care about is you want to make sure your business is in the best position for least risk possible. What they care about is they make money from like per registration, per filing, per like everything. And when you register, and a lot of people don't know this, but when you register in the state, you can actually, as a provider, if they're your provider, they can say, hey, you know what? Like, we're going to ask Kyle to file monthly in Idaho. But you could, based on your revenue, only have to do
file
annual.
like annually, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then you're doing 12 rather than one, and they get paid per.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
crazy.
So whenever you see people like do this per filing thing, and it's just because, usually it's because they don't have the technology built to be able to say, hey, listen, like we'll do it unlimited. And number two, they also just don't have, they don't have their incentives really aligned with what customers are looking for. So
got you. Have you raised a bunch of money for this too?
We raised a little over 4 million last year.
Nice.
We're getting a little bit hounded by some A investors now, but probably just gonna keep heads down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm assuming a lot of that's like for hiring and like building out like the product and everything, like the software and everything.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, this last year it was just this, a lot of these tax people got let go.
Okay.
And so like TaxJar is basically put on life support essentially.
Why is that?
It's they got acquired by Stripe.
Okay.
And I don't know this is my intuition, and like, obviously I don't know if this is right or if this is not right, but it sounds like they've let go of all the salespeople, let go of engineers, the product team. I mean, there's a lot of people. Support is gone. Support's being outsourced. So, and I think a part of it is because the product that was built is really difficult. And I think Stripe probably wanted something that has that technological capability.
But I don't want all the other bells and whistles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is like, hey, listen, we process your payments for like this, 25, 35 basis points or whatever that looks like.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? We can also we can calculate your tax for you for another 25, 35 basis points. So now you've like 10x your revenue. I mean, doubled your revenue potential for like a fraction of the cost.
Dude, Stripe is so good at that.
Dude, yeah.
Like the amount of little like fees that they make is just kind of
crazy.
Oh yeah.
What's up, New Money Talks fam? If you operate any type of business dealing with sending and receiving payments internationally, chances are you've probably experienced slow transaction speeds, high fees, and poor user experience with a multitude of different payment solutions. And we experienced these same challenges before we started using Payoneer. Payoneer is a secure and global payment platform that helps save up to 70% on international bank transfers and get paid faster, whether you're sending money to virtual assistants, employees, or doing B2B transactions. With Payoneer, you can not only send and receive payments globally, but also effortlessly manage payments and transactions with the help of their 24/7 support team by your side. Payoneer has facilitated secure international payments since 2005 and supports over 190 countries with over 70 plus accepted currencies. So you can definitely trust them as your payment platform. So go ahead and click the link below this video and try Payoneer for your next international payment to see how it goes for yourself. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah,
it's like they have like an invoicing fee, then they have a payment processing fee, and then they have like another fee and another
transaction
fee.
fee.
Like literally like say you put like $1,000 invoice through Stripe, you'll probably get out like $950.
Not even sometimes.
Oh yeah,
it's
100%.
And you're just like, well, I thought it was 2.3%, 2.9%. I was like, it's like, yeah, it is, but there's also an invoicing fee that you didn't know about. Yeah.
Dude, luckily, like we have this like some credit for the first year or something, so I'm just kind of riding the wave on that until like we kind of get a little bit
That's solid
down the line. But yeah, anyways, we spent the money to like build out our team and hire these people that got let go, and we just thought there was a better way to do it.
What was the process of like raising like $4 million? Like, what did that look like? How long did it take?
So this is funny, actually. Like, we raised. So people call us crazy, but we raised money without a CEO.
Oh, nice.
So I wasn't like, my goal wasn't in the beginning. I wasn't like, hey, that's what I said. Like, I don't know if I was gonna be running the sales tax company. I was like, hey, I think this is a really good idea. Me and my co-founder, like, I think this is something that we can really build to 0 to 1, and then we should probably get a CEO in. The process was actually it was a pretty shitty time because market was going to shit. This was Q4 last year.
Got you.
People were starting to invest in AI. People were saying like, oh, like everything's going down. War was happening. And I was just like, of course, the one time I actually choose to raise venture money, like, great, this is awesome.
You were in an AI sales tax company.
Dude, we even joked about it. Should we just buy Zamp.ai and then
literally
just raise money? I mean, but like, it was a little bit of like, we have relationships in this space. So there were some people that were like, oh, you guys have built companies before, we'll bet on you. But like that last like 50% was definitely a little bit of a slog. So over time, like we built like pre-rev. I mean, we raised pre-rev, pre-product. And then like while we were building team, we just raised money.
God, and was it like a continuous, just like safe, or you do like a one time kind of like seed round type of thing?
No, we did like a couple of saves. So we told people like, if you come in early and you bet on us, like I mean I know this is gonna be successful given like where the market is. It's execution risk at this point. And so we told people, hey, if you come in early, we'll give you good terms and you'll own more of the company.
A little discount here and there.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like a significant discount. I mean, the people that came in later had to pay almost like a 2x price.
Oh, wow.
So, but there's a lot of value in that because now, like when we go back to people and if we're like ever like, hey, we want to raise a little bit of capital, I know who believed in us first. And I know that they would be willing to bet on us again, And I think there's something to be said about that.
And I'm interested to hear because like raising $4 million is obviously phenomenal feat, but then you're like, well, I got to raise a Series A now, I'm assuming, right? So like you're probably doing, I'm going to spit out some numbers here, probably doing like 1.5 to 2 million ARR type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're like getting there.
Yeah.
And I think like that, I think the way that our business is built, we actually there's a chance that we don't actually raise that much capital.
You don't need it.
Exactly. We don't need it. And we're in this time in the market where you've seen a lot of these companies from last year. Like I've been on the venture side before and it was exciting time for a lot of founders because you're like raising these $30 million rounds and you have like 500K in revenue and you're like, holy cow, like I'm living the dream, baby. and now you're like in this situation of like, why do I do that? And so why not wait till the market is a little bit better? Why don't we just ride this wave? Why don't we get to a point where we're actually running an efficient business and then just raise capital when we kind of need capital? So
like pretty much in a sense, your sales is like, your sales is like being an accountant in a sense. Like, hey, we're a better accountant, so come work with us, right?
Yeah, well, I think yes and no. I think like the people we're basically saying like, hey, sales tax is getting complex. the existing providers are out there aren't really aligning with what you're looking for in terms of that, like whether it's support, whether it's like a plethora of other things. And our approach is much better, and it's going to be helpful for you as you grow your business. And so we're not doing anything crazy from a rocket science perspective, but I promise you we're going to mitigate all of your risk.
And it's probably a really sticky platform in a sense where it's like, once you're locked in, you're in.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look at like Avalara, for example, like these guys, I mean, I've talked to customers where they have a hard time even getting in touch with person within 3 weeks. And yet they're still able to keep a customer.
Well, they have to, because like think of like all the states you've connected. Yeah. I was telling you before, the bullshit sales tax. We get all these letters, all these states. You don't know what the fuck's going on. Like you have to find someone. There's only Taxure, Avalara. Now there's Zamp. So it's 100%. Like, yeah, right? It's like pick your fights. You know, pick your best one.
And I think the tough thing is like once you're on the radar, you can't just like stop being on the radar. It's not like, oh, I'm using this like marketing tool, and you know what? All of a sudden, like we're gonna stop doing marketing for a month. Blah blah blah. Like. We're gonna cut SEO. Like there's no like cutting it. Like once you're in, like you're in the deep end.
Yeah. How do you guys like get new customers now? Is it all like referral based, sales based? What are you guys doing?
So I think it's like a mix, right? I think at the end of the day, like we kind of self-recognize that sales tax is not the number one priority for any business. It should never.
It's not sexy.
Well, sales tax is not sexy for sure. No. But I also think like if sales tax is your number one priority.
Now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of sexy. Like I'm thinking about it in the back of my head, I'm like, fuck. Like the numbers make sense. Like the numbers.
Oh, for sure.
No, I'm saying from the customer perspective.
Yeah. From a business standpoint, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, fuck.
It's very sexy.
Yeah, it's very sexy.
Dude, that's why there's so many of these people.
I'm about to invest after this.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, open up the safe. I'm coming in.
It's funny because like these customers, like, I mean, first of all, I'd be shocked if a customer was telling me, hey, sales tax is my number one problem. Like we got other problems. Yeah. But they're not focused on, they're focused on revenue, and they're focused on profit margin. And that should how it be. And maybe sales tax is that third or fourth item. So going direct to customers is sometimes like a right move, but I also think it's not. I think it's building trust within the community. And and it's so that when they do want a new solution, or if the pain point is high enough, how can you be that solution for them? And yeah, the newer ones you can just get in front of, but some of the larger ones that you want, like we work with like Glamnetic now, like Tushy, and some of these larger companies, but a lot of that was just relationship based. And so the way we kind of go about it is like, hey, let's partner with these CPA groups, these accounting firms and whatnot, because they don't like doing it. But as a brand, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to your accountant and you're like, hey, can you want to run sales tax for me? They're going to be like, absolutely not.
Yeah, fuck that. But
exactly.
But you can use Zamp.
And I tell people, like, I just know that when our hat is in the mix, like we win. And it's not about winning. It's just about like, we provide the right kind of support to our customers. And so that accounting CPA channel is probably one of them. And then the other group within that is like just fintech platforms. So, you know, your Parkers of the world, the Amplas,
we have Parker on next week.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
We're like in the middle of talking to their team to figure out like how we can potentially work together. Cause I know that a lot of these platforms, they provide a lot of things for e-commerce businesses on the finance side, but sales tax is a really key piece of that. And so how can we kind of loop in with their platforms and kind of support that?
And this is also like for like a SaaS company would have to pay sales tax, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even like just e-commerce. It's any company that's online that processes payments online. Right?
It's literally every company in the United States has to pay sales, and not even SaaS. It's like any company.
Like any company, right? Yeah.
I think the question is just like how the problem with it is like offline and online, like mediums of holding transactions is different, and the way people process transactions is different. So sometimes it doesn't always like. It's not like lining up.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Oh, so like with e-commerce, it's simple because like you have Shopify, for example,
exactly,
and all the data is like perfectly set up for you,
right?
But if you're using, I don't know, some other random thing that's like custom built SaaS platform,
for sure.
Well, what are you using? I guess if you're using Stripe, you could probably.
We have like even for the custom ones, we have like an API, right? Because like if you look at like Awaybag or like Misfits Market, all these people, they don't use Shopify.
Oh, they don't. Okay.
Like they're not on these. Like they're not on these. I mean, they're not
on CMSs that are like normal,
right?
Yeah.
And they at some point, like if you're a large enough e-commerce merchant, I mean, and Shopify's changing this obviously. They're to support enterprise customers, but a lot of these larger e-commerce customers today, like they don't use Shopify. They want and it's because Shopify takes some margin and everything's about margin for them, right? So they move it to their own platforms, but we're launching our API in the next like actually 3 weeks, and that's gonna help us integrate into their platform directly. So they say like, hey, let us take your API, let us integrate it into our platform, and you can calculate it at the point of sale. So you don't need an integration.
Interesting.
But the problem that you're talking about is like offline retail. So like the Macy's, like the Nordstroms and stuff like that. They have different systems.
Yeah.
That's a little bit harder to get into because you start opening up like a separate can of worms when you get into like offline.
But like I feel like currently the market's so big of all these online like businesses. It's like, who cares? You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. There's like millions and millions of merchants just on Shopify, which I think is nuts. Like people don't think about that.
Oh yeah. I think there's so much space on. I mean, it's like e-commerce businesses, SaaS businesses, digital services. And the good thing about this is that everybody's moving in that direction, and it's everybody's business is eventually going to start. Not like at least part of it will be online. So it's a good place to be versus like some of these offline spots. So
I know also before Zamp and everything, you're doing other stuff.
Yeah. So like, it's funny because I actually, when I was in school, like I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even think about, hey, I'm going to be like a founder of a tech company. I always thought like, oh, I'll be like an early stage employee, ride the wave out with
based on your LinkedIn, that's what it looked like you wanted to do. Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, you guys have probably met people like
where are you from, by the way?
I'm from Michigan.
Michigan. Okay.
I grew up
to UMich.
No, dude, this is like a sore spot too, because I actually wanted to go to UMich. It was my number one choice. I got into Penn. I got into this like program, engineering, Wharton type thing. And I was still like, I told my parents I'm going to go to UMich.
You want to go to UMich over Wharton, really?
It's because I didn't know any better. And I think looking back, I don't regret it, but I do like, I grew up with like the Michigan, like football spirit, like the basketball, like that culture. And where did you guys go to school?
I went to Berkeley.
Where'd you go to
Rutgers? I went to Rutgers.
Okay, so like you guys had like you guys had Jared Goff. Like, I mean, Rutgers is like a great football team. We never had that at school. Right. And I think at Penn, I kind of missed that a little bit. And that was a big part of the reason why I wanted to go to Michigan. And there's a lot of people where I grew up, we didn't come from like Horseman or like these like top tier like public schools. It was like a pretty like low tier like public school. And so everybody went to like Michigan State and like State. And it was like nice to be around friends.
For sure.
But yeah, I grew up in Michigan and I ended up went to school for like engineering and business. I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna do this like investment banking thing. It's gonna be awesome. And I'm not even kidding. Like since 11th grade, I was like, I'm gonna do investment banking.
I'm gonna go to Goldman.
Yeah, I was like Goldman Tech. This is what I want to do, and that's why I want to get an engineering degree and a business degree so that I can do that. Ended up that like it's like I think 10 months on the desk, like 9 months, I just hated it. I was like, this is.
Oh, you worked at? Where'd you work?
No, I worked at a place called MTS. So this is even worse. Like I ended up being at a healthcare investment bank.
Nice.
Like completely out of left field. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna explore. This was like explore my passions. I want to get into like, always wanted to get into healthcare. I wanted to test it out, like whatever. And I was like, you know what? I didn't do an internship. I did internships on like venture. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get into healthcare. So I did this. Horrible, because everybody's talking to me about these like drug molecules. Like, hey, this is, and I'm just like it's like,
it goes over your head.
Dude. And it's so hard to talk that language if you don't know. Like, imagine talking to somebody like a doctor and they're trying to talk to you about e-commerce. It's just
tough.
Yeah, exactly. And then I left, and then I did private equity for like little over 4 or 5 years.
You did the whole shebang. You went from banking to private equity. You got recruited out and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I started recruiting like a month into my banking gig. I mean, I don't think our team knew like that.
You were on LinkedIn, like.
I just knew in that first month, like, this is just not it.
I'm curious. So why did it suck? Like, just what sucked about it?
I think it's the fact that and I don't know, maybe it's just like a different mentality. I think it's like I worked so hard to get to this point, and I know that my capacity to do more exists, but I'm getting yelled at by this like low level associate for like missing a comma. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
You actually?
I have like
deck. You missed the comma.
I have legit email receipts of like the MD of where I worked, just in like all caps saying, this sucks. You guys need to work on the weekend and get it to me ASAP. Like, what the fuck? And I'm just like, and it's kind of scary because it's your first job, and it kind of puts that fear factor in you of like, holy cow, like if I'm
gonna
doing
get fired.
and then like, but it puts the fear factor in you for other jobs, because it's like, oh, is this just how the job market is? And so like I went to private equity in this like similar fear factor type thing, and I was like, oh, like it ended up being a lot better, and I liked it. I worked on a lot of eCom stuff, and we worked on like the Bolthouse Farms transaction, like a carve out at Campbell's, things like we worked on like the Orgain stuff for a little bit, worked on cool things. And then eventually I was like, dude, this is the same shit every day over and over. Like I I just read a little bit about the company materials, put together a deck, and like I look at my old deck and I say, wait, like what were the highlights here? Okay,
just copied on this
let me like try to figure out what the highlights is, and like you get good at like wording things, like you get good at like business language, because unlike banking, which is copy paste, like you actually have to like be a little thoughtful here.
What's up, New Money Talks fam? If you run an e-commerce business, you know how important cash flow is. I once had over 6 figures held up in a payment processor, and without the assistance of outside funding, I would have never scaled that business to over $1.5 million a month. But there must be a better way to access funding than having to knock on your neighbor's doors or awkwardly ask your friends and family for money like I did. That's where Yardline comes in. Yardline's e-commerce funding solutions offer small businesses instant access to the best rates and terms to meet their business's needs. Yardline can provide your business anywhere between $5,000 and $20 million of funding and get you approved in as little as 24 hours. Unlike other lenders, Yardline offers a wide variety of funding options, including small business loans, revolving lines of credit, revenue-based financing, personal and business credit cards, PO and invoice financing, SBA loans, and much more. The Yardline team will work with you to help you get access to the funding that your business needs. Whether you need help with inventory purchases, product line expansion, marketing, or anything else, Yardline has your back. And best of all, they provide coverage to North America, UK, Ireland, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Netherlands, Belgium, and Australia. So go ahead and click the link below this video, fill out the 3-minute funding application today, and get the funding that you need to grow your business. Now let's get back to the podcast.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's like 5%.
Yeah.
And I think it was cool, but you get to a point where it's like, hey, this is just so repetitive. It's how it was in banking. It's like, it was just mind numbing. I tell people like a monkey could do investment banking. Like, you could teach anybody investment banking.
Well, because bankers just make money on like a commission of a project. So it's like just finish the fucking project and do another project.
Exactly.
Over and over and over again.
But it's not just about, but you don't make shit.
No, you don't make shit. Yeah.
You're not making anything,
the whole time.
Dude.
No, I know.
And I don't even think you're making anything until you get to like the top, which is like you're probably like 50, 60 years old. And the reason that and I think a lot of people don't appreciate this, the reason that they care so much about these commas and stuff is like, it's a commoditized product.
So it has to be perfect.
It has to, like, for some reason this client is selling $1 billion company and you're going to make a 3% commission on it, as a partner, you're probably making 10, 15 mil. And you're like, if you just put it into that context, right? You don't need to have a ton of deals to make a bunch of money.
Think about it, like you made like a 50 slide deck for like $10 million. Every slide is worth like, I don't even know, like $500,000, you know?
It's kind of exactly.
Yeah,
and
so that slide better be fucking good.
And then it's like, if the partner doesn't make money, then the firm doesn't make money. If the firm doesn't make money, you don't have a job. And it's like this whole like everything rolls downhill type mentality of like, you just get screwed. And PE is a little bit different because you're like the one has the money and you're like making the decisions and it's nicer, but it's still like kind of repetitive. So you're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over. And actually it's funny because I didn't even think about entrepreneurship. I was like, I think this is like, I thought about like, oh, in 50 years, like I'm going to be making maybe 10 million. Like this is like what I'm going to be doing, because you kind of get brainwashed into thinking that this is like the top tier job out there. Like finance and Wall Street is like here. And you kind of see movies, right? Like Wolf on Wall Street and like other things that tell you like, wow, that's what I want to be.
Yeah.
But then you step out and I was actually like at randomly like House of Yes, and I met this guy. You guys know House of Yes?
No, it's
it's like some like random I don't want to say like underground club type thing in Brooklyn.
We gotta find it. We gotta hear about it.
I mean, it's like people have like the masks on, like paint and like all that kind of stuff. Like it's like a little bit, you know, it's not like the usual.
Yeah.
The usual suspect.
I'm gonna look this up after.
Dude,
is it like a secret society?
No. It's not a secret thing. It's just like they're a little bit more like out there.
All right.
You know, like it's like yeah. To say it's a little bit out there.
All
You
right.
just have to go and check it out.
I'll check it out.
It's like Cirque du Soleil type vibes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I go there, and this is like when I was working my job, and I hadn't like been looking for a job, and my friend like brings this guy, and I was like, oh cool, like nice to meet you. He ended up going to my school, and he was like, hey, like you should totally talk to this guy, like my co-founder now, his name is Edward Lando. Talk to this guy, like he's looking to hire somebody to you know, help out with investing in like building and stuff. I was like, oh cool, like I'm good with my job, like whatever. And then eventually like I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna take up this guy, I'm just gonna have this call, because sometimes I believe in like creating entropy.
Yeah.
And then you just have to like say yes to things and it'll just happen. Said yes to this guy, ended up going to Soho House, got like drinks with this guy. And then he was like, hey, like, you seem like the right guy for this role. I'm going to introduce you to him. Like, cause I think they like to do this like gate test of like, oh, is this guy just like bullshit or what's the deal? He introduced me, the guy, like he texted, he's like, oh, just text him. I text him. And I didn't know this guy, right? Like, I didn't know like he was like what we had built before. I didn't know his success. Cause you know how successful people, they've got other shit to do. And like, you're not the first priority. And I'm used to coming from this private equity culture in banking where it's like, I text and they text back in like 30 seconds. And I text this guy over like at Friday morning. I was like, oh, like, are you free to talk? Would love to jam on this stuff. Blah, blah, blah. And I get a text back at like 10:30 p.m. and I'm out. Like I'm like full on out. Comedy show. I'm having drinks. And at that moment I was like, he calls me and I looked at my girlfriend. I was like, do I take this right now? And she was like, like, like whatever you want to do. And I was like, it was like that. When it's like you hit 3 rings and it's like, if I don't pick up now, it's going to like voicemail. Yeah. And I was like, you know what, screw it. Like, let me just do this. I don't love my job right now anyways. Like, I think it's fine, but I just want to listen to what this guy has to say. Ended up being on the phone with this guy for like an hour and a half. I'm like semi-drunk, like walking outside.
Like, walking in circles in New York. Exactly. On speaker, you're like this. I've done the same thing. That's funny.
Well, the text from your girlfriend.
Yeah. Like, where are you? Where'd you go?
Exactly. It's like, and like, I remember being on the phone. He's like, your phone is buzzing. Like, what's that noise? And I was like, dude, like, guys, and I like had to do like the DND thing.
Oh man.
And it was funny because I was walking around, like I was outside his comedy club, walking around in circles, right? Like did the exact thing. And this is basketball court, and I see like another guy walking in. And I was like, oh, cool, like this is open. And I think I was just so into the conversation that by the time we finished, it was awesome. And he was like, hey, listen, like we should meet tomorrow, whatever. But by the time we finished, they had locked the gates to like the basketball court. So like I'm over here like, how the fuck do I get out of this thing? So then I ended up like climbing this fence and like jumping out and like I ripped I'm wearing the same pants, but you see there's like this, it's like this like rip from this thing and and he like texted me after. He's like, we're meeting at like 9 a.m. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna be out till like 1. Like at least. Woke up, met this guy, walked around and he did this like walking, talking thing. And it was cool because he kind of was the first person to be like, dude, you're really good at what you do, but why don't you come do it with me? And I think we can build a bunch of great businesses and invest together. And his whole thing was like, hey, I started Pareto with, myself and like with another guy that's also a really elite founder. The guy who was like previously involved is like John Oranger. He's like the founder of Shutterstock.
Oh shit!
Yeah. And
that's who you were talking to on the phone.
Well, no, that was my it was his like business partner at the time, like the prior partner. But I think and Ed had like started Misfits Market, Goody, and like these big time like fintech and e-commerce platforms. And I think when you look at it, you're like, holy cow! And I remember just looking him up, and I was like, holy cow, this guy's crushing it. He's like 3-4 years older than me, and when I look at the people around me, like, where do I want to be? Like, do I want to be like this guy where he's like dictating his own destiny, or do I want to be like putting commas in a dick? It's like I definitely don't want to be doing that. And he was like, yeah, like come join my team. Started investing with him, and I told him, I was like, dude, listen, like I kind of want to get into the like early stage entrepreneurship side. Like one of the pieces we talked about was like, how can I get in early to a company and just be like chief of staff? And he was like, dude, why would you be chief of staff? Why don't you just run a company? He's like, the upside there for you is just significantly higher. And also you get to see how it, like, the sausage is made from the beginning. And I think like eventually, I think having him and having people similar to him, where our whole team is founders and operators at Pareto. And everybody had started a company, and everybody was always thinking like, what can we start? What can we build? Like, hey, let's build like a cat software. Let's build a dog food company. Let's build a supplements brand. Let's and it was just this constant. It just felt like this constant energy. Whereas in like the finance and Wall Street world, it's very like monotone. It's very like we have this Wednesday meeting, and it's like nothing gets decided.
60-year-old white guy just being like, you got to show up, man.
Yeah, dude. And everybody's like a little bit. Everybody's older, and like everything moves slower, and everything's like very bureaucratic and. Here and things were happening on a whim. Like one day we decided we're gonna start this company. Next week that company is like not happening, and then we're starting another. And it's like, and I like that speed, and I felt like I was alive. Eventually, like and I was actually like thinking about starting like a Zoom Info competitor. Like, you guys know Zoom Info, right? Yeah. And then I read about Apollo and like all these things, and I was like, oh, cool. Like I think this is a really cool idea because everybody needs context as email marketing starts to ramp up, and more. It's like, how can you get more data? At the same time, like the way that Zamp actually came up, and I'll bring this around, is because a lot of our as an early stage investor, like we did pre-seed seed stage deals. There were so many things that there's so many companies that we invest in, but there's also so many things that people ask. So how can you provide, and people always say like investors suck, but I think like having been on both sides, I understand from an investor perspective, especially early stage, like you have so many companies out there. It's hard to give everybody like 20 minutes of your attention like every week, because like time is a limited resource and you need to be making deals, and to make deals you need to put in time. And so a lot of times what I look for is like, how can I get leverage for the companies? Like how can I look for one thing that's going to help 50 companies? And whether it's like, you know, like a platform like Incense, which is like a creator platform, or whether it's like, hey, like talk to Triple Whale for this, or hey, like here's, you know, talk to, you know, my friend Reggie, he knows how to do the AI stuff and knows how to implement it. And it's kind of like, what is that one thing? And you kind of look in the asks section that companies have, and usually it's like, hey, I need, and you're just like, I need money.
I need interest from more investors.
It's I think the number one thing is like, I need money. Number two is like, I'm looking to hire somebody like a head of product, or, you know, e-commerce person, manager, or whatever else, like agency, like, can you help me? And the third on there was, I think I saw it a lot, was like sales tax.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was the same problem. Like, hey, like we're having issues with Avalara, like, or tax jar, like, do you know some? And for some reason, always like, do you know somebody there? I was like, dude, like, what? Do you think I just have like a hot dial to like support? To be like, hey, like, let me just get you on the phone with them. And after a while, it was just like, okay, let me just look into it so that I can figure out how to help our portfolio companies. And I was like, let me make a revenue stream out of this, because obviously I was like still like early at this group and trying to help out, and maybe I could bring in some extra revenue for the business. So I reached out to people there, you know, and it was this like conversation of like, talking to the operators, talking to their business, understanding their sales process. I realized like these platforms isn't exactly what people were looking for. People didn't want to just sign up with a software provider. They wanted somebody to just do everything for them. And these people weren't doing it for them. And so at that point, I was like, me and Ed were like, dude, I think it's brilliant. I was like, hey, do you have this problem at Misfits? Do you have this problem at your other companies? And he's like, yeah, this is a huge problem. But it's not something that people talk about. Yeah. Because people only talk about, hey, how well are we doing? Like, what does our revenue look like? Okay, like, what are our margins? Are we like 40%? Are we 50%? Like, what is, you know, what 3PL are we using? Nobody's talking about the sales tax side, but when you dig into it, it's always a problem.
Always a fucking problem.
Dude, yeah. And so we were kind of like, why don't we just start this thing? But I think as investors, and especially coming from like a more risk averse background of private equity, you're like, how do I make sure that, how do I put our business in the best position so that if I do start it and I hire people, like it doesn't fail.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I don't think I've seen too many people and people did this a lot, like in 2019 to 2021. They just raised a bunch of capital. And now you're seeing like the ramifications. They raised a bunch of capital, hired people, and then they just had to let go of these people. And it would happen like, it's like a 1-year turnover, and all these people that like signed up for your vision, like signed up to believe in you. Like, number one, you ruin your trust a little bit in the market. But number two, it's like, what kind of standard do you hold to yourself of like how you run a business? And so we looked and we're like, oh, these acquisitions happened that I mentioned, like the tax jar one and the Avalara one, like they weren't supporting customers. Like, okay, the timing makes sense. Now can we get the people to do this? Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to just go in and just hire like X Square guy, because it's such a niche space that it's not just like, oh, let's hire like an Airbnb X Square guy. Like I have to get these people to do it, because
tax jar and Avalara.
Exactly.
That's all your options. Yeah.
And there's people out there that are looking to do it with people that don't know sales tax, and maybe they don't run into trouble like day one or day two, but eventually over time, like that trouble will, if you are like willing to take 5% risk on every customer, that risk will start compounding.
Makes sense.
And you'll get caught on the back end. So it's like, how can we do this? And so we started talking to the, you know, operators and people, and we're like, hey, listen, all these people were like, this, we think there's a better way to do this. So we raised the money to essentially hire this team, and that's kind of how this ended up being like a whole thing. I never was like, oh, I want to do sales tax. It was more of like an organic thing of like finding a problem. Let's problem solve. Oh, we can't find a problem for this. Why don't we just build it ourselves?
Do you guys have an office, or is it more like remote?
I wish I had an office. I wish we had an office.
Just get an office.
No, I have an office.
Oh.
The team as a whole doesn't, like, we're all remote, because so this is like where other teams' cultures start to permeate too. Taxter was all remote. So all of their best talent is in all different parts of the country, like Seattle, Maine, Florida, Arizona, we have like people in like Missouri and it's just like, you just don't get that access. And I'd rather get the best people that work separate places than get like semi-okay people that work here.
Yeah.
Especially for a product that don't really like. It's not my first domain expertise.
Like that you don't know, but they know better than you. So just feel comfortable and do your thing type of thing.
What's up, New Money Talks fam? As most of you may know, how you handle your supply chain and your inventory management as an e-commerce brand or a 3PL can make or break your business. Inventory management can be extremely tedious and daunting, and that's why there's tons of different solutions to help simplify this process. However, none of them come close to what Info Plus has to offer. Info Plus is an all-in-one warehouse management tool that helps you streamline your warehouse operations and automate processes to save time, reduce errors, and elevate your inventory management. Info Plus can help you increase order accuracy to over 99% and help boost on-time shipping rates to over 99% with centralized workflows, real-time inventory tracking, order prioritization, and automated shipping processes. And their awesome customer support team is there to help you configure everything in a way that is specifically tailored for your business's unique operational needs. Info Plus also has hundreds of shopping cart integrations, exclusive carrier connections, and effortlessly syncs data with other platforms using their open API. Info Plus is trusted by some of the world's leading e-commerce brands such as Walmart, Amazon, and eBay. So click the link below and check out Info Plus today to level up your warehouse management operations. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Exactly. And I think it's just about the interview process. I mean, I talked to maybe 200-300 people, give or take.
Wow.
And it's just about finding the right person.
How do you get to interview 300 people? Because like, for example, I've hired a lot of people before, and like, it's always hard. Like you put a job list here up on like ZipRecruiter or Indeed. Like, you're only going to get so many people that fit the mold. How do you get 300 people? Like actually,
I don't do that.
What do you do?
I think like for me, I want the best person.
Okay.
And I just make my wish list of here's the 50 people I'm going to go after. And I do whatever I can to talk to these 50 people.
Oh, so you go out to them.
Yeah.
And you just try to like poach them pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these people were like actually, fortunately and unfortunately for them, they were also out of jobs.
Got you.
So
it's a perfect marriage.
Yeah. It was a little bit of a perfect storm. And there were some people that I had to be like, hey, like I had to put up a job posting just to see like what that interest would be like. I'd just like to have a catch-all. But I usually find that if you want the best people, you have to go after them. And because nobody's going to be able to, I mean, you guys are like, you have your own companies. Like nobody's going to be able to tell that person what your vision is. Nobody's going to be able to tell that person what your vision is by a JD. Like they're also not going to understand like, who are you? Like, and it's all about like, people use LinkedIn, people use like Twitter, but all these platforms are about connection, like personal connection. So why not put your like personal connection out there and find a way to bridge that gap?
For sure. No, I like that. I've been doing some more of that where like I just find like my problem is I want people to be in person. I hate remote. Like I just have an assistant in Belize.
Wow.
And she was actually good, but like it was just weird because like I just wanted to be like next to them and like this is exact like you're doing like 70% of what I want, but here's 100%. But I can only show it to you because like if you were here, you know what I mean? Like it's weird like that. I had to fire her because I just like wasn't working out. But like I want everyone to...
How was that firing process for you, by the way? Like I mean, would you feel like, and I asked because it was like a remote person, I'm in the process of potentially hiring an assistant too, because I just need a little bit more leverage.
Well, I hired them through like an agency.
Oh, okay.
So like they actually fired them for me.
Oh, okay.
And then the guy was like, I'll give you somebody else, and I was like, oh, let's just wait up a little bit. Belize is actually a very good country though for like virtual assistants. They speak fluent English, they read English.
Oh, nice.
And they're in the same time zone as us.
That's the best.
I think they're like 1 hour off. My assistant also had like an iPhone, which was kind of sick because I could like FaceTime her and like text her like blue text and everything. It was pretty cool. And it was cheap as hell.
The standard is pretty low. It's like if you have blue text, that's what
you're qualified.
Because you hire some of these VAs and you have to like WhatsApp, whatever, like Google, whatever. It's like fuck all. I just wanted to call. I want to FaceTime you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
What would you guys talk about on FaceTime?
Not like,
it was just like, oh, okay.
No, like she would just like text me stuff and I'd be like, I'll just call you. Like, I'll just call her and be like, she's like, oh, this makes a lot more sense. You know what I mean? 100%. I just feel like calling people is easier and like FaceTime's even better than calling because it's like, oh, you actually see the person, you see like how they're like,
they're not in their bed,
they're not sleeping. All these things. Actually, a good thing about them too was like they were an agency, so like they would make them come to the office every single day. So they would work in the office. So
I actually I try to implement. I mean, I don't try to implement it, but I try to have everybody like on our meetings just put on their videos so that you can just
100%.
Especially if you're like a remote team, I think that's pretty important.
I think the most turn off thing is when I'm on a sales call and the person doesn't turn on their fucking camera. I'm like, hey, I think your camera's not working. That's what I say. And they're like, no, it didn't. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, sorry, like it doesn't work, and you get like some bullshit excuse.
Yeah, some bullshit excuse, and I'm like, oh, I guess mine doesn't work now either.
I'm gonna match your energy.
No, but like, firing them, like I fire like that. Like obviously, when you fire anybody, you don't feel good about it.
Yeah,
I've had to fire people before, and
I'm just worried about the EA stuff because it's harder to suss out, and it's like I'm like looking at this agency, and it's like pretty inexpensive.
Which one? Shepherd?
No, it's like this group out in like Philippines that just like is supposed to be like.
Yo, talk to my guy in the Belize though. Like actually, like I'll connect you with them
because that's
like,
one of hundreds.
One of hundreds, yeah. But like they're like legit. Like I just like because they spoke like no accent English.
Yeah,
and, like could read English. It was just like I felt like okay, I'm talking to someone who would work here. You know what I mean?
at overseas prices.
At overseas prices.
Yeah,
oh no,
sure.
yeah, it was like $7 an hour or something like that.
Dude, I have this whole like thesis that I think, and a lot of people disagree, but I think that, I mean, we have a couple of our people based out of like our engineers. They're in like, I mean, they're our team, but they're based out of like South America.
Okay.
But they're like top talent on our team, right? And they like, we picked them out of people that we saw in the United States too.
Oh, wow.
And like outreach that we like, I'm talking about the direct outreach that we were just talking about. Like we used some recruiters because I think engineering is a little bit harder, but we did direct outreach. We built our lists. We got the recruiters and we still picked them. And I have this thesis that like a lot of talent is going to start shifting overseas, especially 100%. As like the language barrier starts to drop and there's just more of like a global connective tissue of like, hey, everybody speaks English. Everybody has like similar levels of education, access to education with, you know, the Coursera's, the Udemy's and like whatever of the world. So, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Another great country for engineers is Poland.
Really?
Poland's like full of engineering talent. So like we built our own WMS in-house, like our warehouse management system. And like it's all just Polish team that like did it all.
Dude, I mean, the people that help us on our web development is all Ukraine.
There you go.
Legendary.
Yeah. Eastern, I guess that's Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Like, and I think they're like a mix of like Eastern European people too. And I've never worked with more responsive people in my life. Not that our team's awesome too, but like I think just like from a agency and like perspective, I was a little bit skeptical at first because
100%.
You know, you see like go to Upwork and they have like 10,000 5-star reviews. I was like, what, like, are you just buying your reviews? Like, how?
Right? Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Like, it's kind of nuts. They're just like whoring out to hundreds.
And also, like, I think these days it's so easy to, and you see it, I think, on like Instagram and like other stuff where people just you like buy followers, right? Or you buy like I've seen people buy like there's companies that like you can buy reviews from.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And it's like, how many of these are actually legitimate?
Who knows? And
so I was like, oh, like we're just gonna start with a small project, and then like, you know, they crush it, and you're like, okay, here's some more, and then now it's like they're just running like website stuff for us.
Nice,
which is like
that's huge. How big's the team?
Our team?
Yeah,
our team is we just hired our marketing person, so it's 16 now.
Nice.
Yeah, growing. I think we start. I mean, I think this time last year we were 2. So
shit.
Damn.
Yeah, we're
when you tell the vision to your like big investors, what do you tell them?
I think if you look at the market, it kind of explains itself in some ways. The vision is that we want to be the go-to indirect tax compliance platform for businesses. Anything that, I mean, and what that means is like their sales tax is one piece of it. As you get international, that's another piece of it. As you start going to different countries, that becomes another piece. This specific problem is so big, it's like a $30 billion problem. And there's not a lot of people in the world that can do it where they're like a one-stop shop for everything. Yeah. And it's important because this cosmopolitan piece is important because a lot of companies are starting to go international. They're starting to sell. You're just getting easier access to people across. Like you're starting to see people, I mean, like Quay, for example, Australian company, they sell into the United States very easily. But like today we can't support them. So how can we build a platform where we're supporting like global commerce and making it a little bit easier? Frankly, I think United States is like probably the hardest rules. So we started with the US. But that's like the bigger vision. But when you look at market, sales tax is getting more complex. The rules change pretty regularly. And when I say like regularly, it's like monthly, quarterly, annually, depending on change by state, change by city, district. On top of that, like you're seeing new products come up all the time in the market, different rules. So the complexity is growing. the number of businesses online is growing. E-commerce is kind of in its like, I'd say like in its early stages, and you're going to start seeing more and more e-commerce companies take up more and more market share of just retail generally. As that grows, like our industry grows too. So when you look at it, like we don't need to be like a monopoly in the space. We just need to be one of the options in the space. And I mean, I want to be the top option, but the vision is like, let's help indirect tax for everybody. Space is growing. There were some cool acquisitions that happened in the market, but I think we can do it better and make a lot of it like tech driven instead of like services oriented.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Do you have anything?
I was going to ask, if you were to be running an e-commerce brand right now, would you bake the cost of sales tax into the product cost, or would you just check on that feature that says collect sales tax on Shopify?
But so I think it's the latter, because this is, I think, where a lot of people run into trouble. They actually, and this kind of like gets to your point too, is like a lot of people don't realize that like they have to collect sales tax, or they say like, hey, like, and we kind of talked about this earlier, e-commerce founders just say, screw it, we're not collecting sales tax. When you're not collecting sales tax, you're putting the risk on your own business. You're saying like, hey, you know what? Like, I know we're supposed to be charging these customers $1 million out of like $20 million of our revenue, but we're not going to charge that $1 million. But if the states come asking, we'll pay it out of pocket. So that's margin. Do. Yeah. But that's like your first instance of like, that's your margin.
Yeah.
But in reality, the way that it works is like that $1 million, like you could pay a software provider, like, I mean, you could pay us like literally 5-10% of that. And the amount that you're paying us now, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure you charge your customers your sales tax. Mm-hmm. So you're not paying it out of pocket. But that's really important because that doesn't eat your margin. You're not at risk with states. And then number 3, like you're just not on the radar like that.
I feel like the pushback on e-commerce is like, well, my conversion rate goes down. That's pretty much like the biggest pushback. It's like, well, I have to add this shit. So like,
for sure,
people already don't want to pay $60. I have to pay like $65. So it's like, it just screws me on that end, you know?
100%. And I think that from I mean, I guess if you want to price your product, yeah, maybe you want to loop it in, maybe you don't. But I think consumers these days are, first of all, like if that's the reason people aren't buying your product, I have this opinion that's like, you have other issues.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But I think consumers these days are so used to paying the sales tax that it's not like, holy cow, like what am I paying?
Yeah, it's a couple bucks.
Yeah, and I think it may depend. If it's like $100 order, your sales tax is going to be like up to $10 max.
Right.
And yeah, that's not like fun. And you might have to pay like another 10 for shipping, but
right.
People are kind of used to it these days. Like you go to like, you know, Whole Foods or whatever.
That's true. Yeah, you have to pay sales tax, of course. Yeah.
And it's not like a make or break it for your bank either. So
yeah, I think there's apps that can collect the sales tax on your behalf and then like quantify it for you. There's also, you know, cohorts and stuff within Shopify. But when you do charge that, I think typically if you don't have like a fancy app or something, all that revenue just goes into your regular bank account, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's up to you to be able to calculate that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then pay it.
Exactly. Like you have to, when you're saying like when you charge the sales tax?
Yes.
Yeah, you can essentially manually charge it to your customers. That's like a complex process. Like some accountants do that, but non-tech driven. You charge that sales tax, and I think the worst thing you can do is hold on to the sales tax. Like that's like, I think I tell our customers, like I would like rather have you not charge sales tax than to charge sales tax and hold on to it, because that's basically like a felony.
Yeah.
And you're just like stealing money from the government.
Yeah.
But I think where it gets a little bit harder, if you do charge it and you do want to remit it, is like some of these forms, they're like, hey, here's like all the fields. You need to tell us like which city we need to pay the sales tax to. We need to tell us which district. And it's like, dude, I don't have time to go through all these orders. Which is why like tech becomes important, of like, if you just know the location, what product you're selling, it'll automatically flow through our forms and it will be populated. And that's what, and it's kind of like, do you want to spend your hours doing that? Or would you rather just get somebody else to do it for you, and then you spending those 10 hours on, you know, optimizing your marketing campaigns, optimizing like ad spend, building relationships in the space, whatever that is. It's kind of like, how much do you value your time?
Interesting. Have you guys considered creating like an app on Shopify where it can collect that sales tax?
It's a private app.
Oh, it's a private app.
Yeah. But is there a way that you can collect just sales tax, but then reserve it in a separate place or an account to then have to pay wherever you need to pay it, as opposed to going to like one central account with your regular revenue?
Oh, for sure. 100%. I mean, that just depends on the like the business itself.
Yeah.
We haven't done it so that it's like basically saying like, hey, instead of going into your Chase, it's going to go into your like, I don't know, like your Bank of America account or your Amplo account. And maybe like that's something that we look at, but I think the customer can move it into whatever account they want. I think for the customer, I think you can actually probably use like a Zapier integration to essentially say like, hey, all the sales tax that we collect from Shopify, just move it into this specific account,
like a sub account or something.
Yeah, but then now you're getting like interest on it, and like you're generating some money on like maybe the taxes that you collected. I mean, it's not for a long time. It's like probably for that month or for the quarter.
So that's a problem too.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
But I mean, it could be like pretty. I mean, I've talked to some businesses that do that where we're not talking like $1 million business. We're talking about like $50 million businesses that are collecting like legitimate amounts of money in taxes, where they'll just have it in like a 1 month treasury or like an X month treasury, and then they'll essentially like use that specific account to draw down from when they do have to pay the taxes. So now like maybe they've made like a few $10,000, but that $10,000 maybe paid for their SEO, or it's just finding that like optimization in your margin a little bit. But it's not going to be like a ton.
Yeah. It's crazy that the threshold's only like 200 orders for most states, right?
Yeah, it's usually 200 orders or 100K. And I think the other thing that people don't factor in, I think a lot of e-commerce businesses that we talk to, usually our sales process is usually like educational. It's not like, oh, I'm telling you what my product is. I'm just telling you like, hey, this is what your situation is. You just figure out what to do. The one thing they miss is I'd say like about a little over half the states, your wholesale orders, like if you're selling in like a Whole Foods or Thrive Market, whatever, your wholesale and marketplace orders count towards your thresholds too.
Also, if you look at 20K order,
of those,
you hit 100K. Yeah,
exactly. And you see it with like companies like we support. I mean, like for example, we see like Sansa, where a lot of drink companies, they do a lot of their stuff through retail. And they're like, oh, like we don't have to pay sales tax, blah, 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 like because they're handling it for us. I was like, yes, but if e-commerce is a part of your business and it's like they're doing like even $1 million in revenue, all of that stuff you're doing on retail is going to impact your e-commerce stuff. And so people get into this, they come to us and they're like, oh, like we got a notice from the state, like I didn't know about this, this, and this. And they find out because those marketplaces and these wholesale people, they're doing their sales tax right because they have to. And they're saying like, hey, this customer and this brand, we're remitting sales tax on behalf of them, and this is how much money they made. So now the government knows, oh, this brand made this much money. Like I haven't seen anything from these guys for the last 12 months. What the hell? And it's getting worse now because there's this like stat where this past year the government was supposed to collect $1 trillion in sales tax. I mean, like I can't even quantify like $1 trillion, and they only collected like 2/3 of that. It's like 650 billion.
Wow. So they missed a bunch.
So they missed a ton.
Jeez.
And when you look at the market, we were just talking about this earlier, is like consumer spending is tightening up. Like people are spending less. I mean, eventually less people are going to have jobs. Government's going to make less money on taxes in general. So how do you kind of tap into that? Instead of them collecting 2/3 now, they're going to want to keep that 650 billion. But maybe the base is like 900 million now, or 900 billion. It's like, how do I like do, and it's just more collections, and they're going to like, you're starting to see this, people just coming after them. People.
No, this has been a sick conversation. I honestly wasn't expecting this for 9 o'clock in the morning.
Earliest podcast we've ever done. This is the first one we've
done like super early. But like you were like, yo, you want to do it? I was like, honestly, fuck it, let's try it.
I mean, I'd have been down. I mean, yeah, down for later, down for early.
No. But because like I was like, well, if we get done by like 10:30, it's like, oh shit, like you have a whole day and like you had a good conversation. 100%.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
No. Dude, thanks for having me.
No, dude, 100%. Yeah. I did not expect this conversation at all. But I do think it's like a very useful like tool business to have, you know, because like you said, e-commerce, obviously you need it, but like any online business needs it. So like you're gonna be just fine with this one.
I mean, I also tell people like, even if you don't need it, I can just talk to people and like just tell you like, hey, here's some advice on like what I think you should do.
100%.
Because I think a lot of people take this approach in the market. I think this is any SaaS company. I actually hate this about SaaS and e-commerce. They just pitch you a product. Like they just shove it down your throat and they're like, hey, you have to use this. And they're trying so hard to convince you to use their product. And I think that approach is wrong, where it's like, you should just help people. And if you help people, like it's kind of like a friend. If you help a friend, like that friend is going to come back to you. And
of course, they want to reciprocate. Yeah,
exactly. And it's not even, you don't do it for the reciprocation. You do it just to put like, I believe in like putting just good karma out there and just doing good. And then you'll get like some of that good back at some point.
Yeah.
100%. This is sick. Where can people find you too?
LinkedIn, like I probably used the most. I had to get a new Twitter because I had like an older Twitter from like
you had other stuff on there that you don't want to talk about. Back
Not
in those
very
Michigan
investor
days,
friendly.
those Michigan high school days. Yeah,
dude. Yeah, and it was just like a different time then. So I have like a Twitter, a row on brand, but I usually like stay on LinkedIn, post content.
And Zamp.com. Like what a domain.
Zamp.com.
I was Bali. I was like, I paid a good amount of money for that one.
Dude, we got lucky because this goes back to like my co-founder too. He's like very entrepreneurial, very like, hey, let's start a bunch of businesses. And across all of us, like we own just a bunch of domains.
Nice.
We don't actually do anything for those domains, but like we just own a bunch of them. But and I wish people told me this sooner, but buying a domain is like an investment. Because at some point, like maybe there's some point when people don't use domains, but like for the time being, I think for the 5-10 years, you buy a domain that there's a good chance that domain is going to be worth more. And you could have bought like like I just bought a domain called Leica.ai, 4-letter domain, and it's like it didn't sound like anything crazy. I just got an offer in for like 8x the price.
Damn.
Wow. 3 months later, and like people talk about flipping houses. I'm like,
flip domains.
Yeah. Wow.
So, little side hustle for everyone watching.
Exactly. For sure.
But like, we'll find you on Twitter. Oh, we'll find you on Twitter.
Yeah.
Find you on LinkedIn, Zamp.com if you need tax.
We'll have it all linked in the
description.
Is there
like we get like a promo code or something to give to the people? Is there a promo
code?
For
sure.
I mean, NMT 15,
Zamp 15, or like NMT 15.
Go for it. I mean, I think I'll give you guys 20 just because
perfect.
You guys are
not
great.
for us, for the people.
No, for the people, exactly. for the people, I think
people.
We usually do like 15, but like I'll do 20 for you guys.
NMT 20.
Yeah,
I appreciate you. Thanks for coming
sure.
on. And on our end, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Shout out to the sponsors. I don't know really who you are for this video, but you're down below.
Maybe next month we'll have Zamp.
Exactly.
That might be a sponsor. Yeah, click the links. They're the best, and like shout us out on anything. We're growing. We're almost at 3K subs on
awesome.
YouTube.
Yep.
We almost have 10K on Instagram and like 70K on TikTok. So
TikTok's getting there. If only we had something we could put in TikTok shop. That's the new thing these days.
Should make some merch.
We should make some merch. Oh,
we got to use our Printful credit.
Facts. Yeah, we had Printful sponsor us for like 2 months. So
yeah. Printful's awesome.
Awesome, man. Anyways, catch you guys on the next one. Thank you.
See you in the next one.
All right, see you guys.